So I got to talk about a couple things in regards to, I guess you could call it the aftermath of Boots versus Xander Zayas. Shout out to Jaron Ennis once again on a great performance. So after the fight, Virgil Ortiz got very vocal and started talking about both fighters, about Boots, about Xander. And I wanted to address that. So we'll start with Virgil Ortiz in regards to Jaron Ennis, because he said pretty much, and I asked Eddie Hearn about this last night in the post-fight presser, about Virgil Ortiz's comments. Virgil pretty much said in so many words that, if and when he gets Jaron Ennis in the ring, that he's going to sleep him, and that, that's just really all there is to it. And to that, Eddie Hearn said that Virgil Ortiz has been asleep for about a year. So, I don't know what he's talking about. That's not going to happen. So, look, man, Virgil Ortiz, Jaron Ennis, it remains, and especially now with Xander Zayas, losing and Boots putting on that kind of performance, it remains in terms of what the best fight is, in my opinion, what the best fight is in the division, or what the most significant fight is in the division in terms of like action. Because I think Boots versus Virgil is going to be an all-action fight. Fedora versus Boots, and Fedora versus Virgil obviously be great too. But I've always liked the Boots and Virgil fight in terms of like their styles meshing well. Boots, as you saw last night, he's dangerous enough to beat you within an inch of your life, but he's also vulnerable enough to where guys can have their success. And Xander Zayas, I love Xander Zayas, but Xander Zayas does not punch on the level of a guy like Virgil Ortiz. Does Virgil move as much as Xander? No, but Virgil, and I've always said this about Virgil, Virgil does have one of the best power jabs in the business. And when he gets downhill on you and is able to push you back, he's throwing some serious heat. And so, Jaron Ennis will have to tighten up on some more things, and I'm sure he's gonna go back to Philly with Bozy and them and come up with a great game plan for when and if that fight does happen. So, it's easy to say things from outside the ring. It's another thing to get in there and do it, especially against a guy like Jaron Ennis, who has punching power in both hands, who's super athletic, who has footwork, who can pivot around you, and who just really ups the levels and ups the gears as the fight goes on. If you're sitting there and you're cooperating and you're fighting with him, right, he'll drown your ass, okay? So that's that aspect of it, and hopefully it can get done. I do see it being a bit of still a harder fight to make, because Golden Boy Virgil hasn't fought in over in about almost a year's time, and he's not a champion. And Boots wants to go undisputed. Boots doesn't want to waste. I'm sure Boots doesn't want to sit around and wait to go undisputed. If he can get Fedora, if he can get Kelly, that's the route he's gonna go. But the Virgil fight still remains very interesting. Now, Virgil also had a lot to say about Xander Zayas, and rightfully so. Xander Zayas had a lot to say about him. Hell, I've had a lot to say about Virgil, in my opinion, because this man fought Madrimov. He big time and stuck his nose up at Xander Zayas and fought Madrimov, which did nothing for his career, which is why he had to sit at home and watch, Boots and Virgil, just like I did at ringside. He had to watch it too on TV, because he fought Madrimov and didn't want to fight Xander Zayas when he was supposed to. So I made my point about that plenty of times. You guys know what I think about Madrimov. But Virgil Ortiz Virgil Ortiz said to Xander that pretty much that Xander did better than he thought he would do, but that Xander ultimately, at the end of the day, the bottom line, straight like that, Xander's a pussy and he quit in the fight. And that's been a popular thing. People have been saying Xander quit in the fight. And you know what? I'm not even going to knock you for it, because from the TV angle, I've seen the TV version of it, and Xander looked out of the ring and he nodded his head. But I was looking at, the outside of the ring when Boots was pouring it on Xander in the 7th round, and I saw Xander's team going up the steps, and I knew they were going to stop the fight. So he could have just been nodding his head saying, okay, you're going to stop the fight. I don't know. He quit. Listen, if you say he quit, I ain't gonna knock you for it, but it is what it is, man. Only Xander knows internally if he had more to give, if he could have pressed the issue. I'll say it like this: Chris Eubanks Sr. talks about the Warriors Code, how there's no feeling sorry, there's no retreat, there's no surrender, there's no out in the ring. That is the referee's job, and that is your team's job. The fighter should not be looking for a way out. I thought Xander fought as hard as he could have possibly fought. That's why I think him fighting as hard as he possibly could have fought got him in some really unsafe and precarious situations throughout the fight. But when it comes down to being great in the sport of boxing, and it's harsh. The boxing game is a cruel, unforgiving world. You know, you got to go above and beyond the call of duty. And that's just what it is. And if you don't go above and beyond the call of duty, no matter what any sane, rational person says, you may get to pat on the back. People may say they respect you, but ultimately, unless you go on to achieve something great after that, you become a footnote in history. So we'll see if Xander Zayas continues to achieve really good things in the sport of boxing. I mean, he was 23 years old, youngest unified champion. We'll see if he goes on to become a middleweight champion and can do some great things at middleweight. But ultimately, if we're going by the Warriors code, Xander Zayas gave a great fight, and I'm happy about it. But you know, he didn't really go above and beyond the call of duty, right? When things got hot in there, and that's why he lost, and that's why Jaron Ennis is getting the flowers, because Jaron Ennis went above and beyond the call of duty. So Virgil Ortiz has a right to feel, I guess, pissed off or harmed, or not harmed, but pissed off and frustrated about his career because he hasn't fought in a while. But to call Xander Zayas a pussy, I don't think is fair. If you want to say he quit, I mean, that's up for debate. I'm not gonna say you're wrong, he quit or not, because like I said, on TV, it did nod at his head, and it looked like he quit and looked for a way out. So I won't go against you on that one, but you can't call a guy a pussy when the fight was there for you to take with him, and you decided to go fight Madrimov, who did nothing for your career. You didn't beat Virgil, or you didn't beat Xander. Boots beat Xander. So why are you acting like it's your win? You didn't beat him, and you haven't beat anybody since you fought Lubin. And I almost don't even want to count that as anybody, because Lubin was overrated to begin with, and he was shot when you fought him. That's neither here nor there. Hopefully, Virgil Ortiz gets these fights so that he can show the world, you know, the fighter he is. And listen, I'm not here to talk down on Virgil. I like Virgil. Virgil is probably one of my favorite fighters to watch in boxing, but he's got a lot of things to make up for in his career. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes for Virgil Ortiz. And yeah, those are my thoughts on that. You know, you don't win fights by not getting in the ring and then somebody else doing your job. You win fights by you doing your job. And you can't call a guy a pussy who literally has double the amount of world titles as you do, and he's way younger than you. He's way younger than you, with less fights, and that's what it is. So I'll leave it at that when it comes to Virgil and Xander. And as far as Boots, I mean, you got to believe in yourself. You got to back yourself. But ultimately, like, there was opportunities for Boots and Virgil to fight a couple times. One time I would say was definitely Boots' fault. The other time I would say is Virgil's fault. But either way, it takes two to tango, and the fight didn't get done. So, you know, get back, get active, and be at your best. And let's see if you know you can go ahead and beat Jaron Ennis, because if you can, that puts you on a whole another trajectory, a whole other planet. And I want to see the fight, because, you know, like I said, Xander ain't throwing with the same heat that Virgil's throwing with, and he was able to take Boots to some deep, dark places in that third round. I don't care nobody says. He took Jaron Ennis to some deep, dark places in that third round, had his head snapping back, you know? So I'll leave it at that, but those are my thoughts.